Hello, hello. I'm Reem, and today I'm going to talk about research that I did for Editor X. So, you see my screen? Great. Okay. So first off, let's talk about me for a little bit. So I'm Reem. I'm 23, and I'm an English literature grad student in Tel Aviv University. I studied psychology and English literature for my BA. So this is where my love for research comes from. I was also a research assistant at university, and I joined Wix a year ago. So I joined in very certain circumstances, very happy circumstances. I joined the student program, which includes 2 months of training, which include um, a lot of lectures from different speakers, training briefs, and just everything you need to know to become a UX writer. Then I was placed in Editor X as a part-time writer. And a few months afterwards, the team felt that I was ready to take on a full-time job, and I transitioned to my full-time role. And so the story that I'm gonna talk about today happened when I was still a student. So first off, I'm going to talk about a little about Editor X. So it's a no-code web creation platform built for web designers by designers. Editor X has a very specific target audience of professional designers. It offers more design creativity than the Wix editor and more control over breakpoints. So let's dive into the research. When we were working on a new feature that lets you customize your grid on the whiteboard, we realized that we were referring to this area of the builder using two terms, canvas and stage. So for example, we were using stage in major panels, such as interactions, our keyboard shortcuts, and more. Well, we were using canvas in some instances, such as the site checker, some tooltips, and also the blank template. And this is obviously a problem of consistency. It affects our perception because our terminology reflects who we are as a product and our message. It also creates confusion. When we use two different terms, people naturally assume that we were talking about two different areas. Moreover, it hinders the user's education. When users are confused about this term, they have to search both terms to find relative materials. Moreover, it just doesn't look professional. So I went to the team and I told them about a problem, and they offered me a quick way out. They said, we've always used stage, just change everything to stage. But I just had a gut feeling that I can't make such an important decision based on what we've always done. And so I decided to do a bit of research. So here's a quick overview of the research that I've done. I first looked at our internal use of the terms. Then I collected some user data. Then I did some competitor research. And finally, I tried to take over the user's point of view. So internally, I focused on understanding the scope of the issue and finding out how we're using the two terms. So in terms of the UI, we did mostly use stage. About 80% of the time, we use the term stage. As for customer care and knowledge base, it was a bit different. In customer care, they always use Canvas, both in the chatbot and in the expert scripts. And as for knowledge base, they use the two terms, but they used Canvas more often, about 70% of the time. As for our marketing team, they also had interesting results. They used the term Canvas in all of their videos, but in their written materials, they used both terms, with Canvas being a bit more often. Okay, so then I decided to look at our users. How are they using the terms? So for that, I contacted our customer care experts and I requested a bit of research. And one of the experts collected a few tickets, a bit over 100, and the results were a bit shocking. Turns out most users didn't use neither stage nor canvas. They simply referred to it as the page. So I decided to dig a bit deeper into the user data, and I collected some user comments myself. And for that, I went to our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything. And then I just collected a lot of posts that users had there, mostly on Facebook. And I saw like a lot of posts using Canvas and few that use Stage. Then I combed through the results and realized that most of the posts using Stage were actually Wix employees. And then I looked at the competitors to try to determine what the industry standard is. So all of our competitors, and it's important to say that the EditorX competitors are different from the Wix competitors because we target professional designers. So our direct competitors include Webflow, Vev, Duda, and more. And our indirect competitors are design apps and platforms such as like Figma and Photoshop, Illustrator, everything Adobe. So all of our competitors, direct and indirect, use the term Canvas. Some expose the term in the UI, and some only refer to it in knowledge base articles. It's really important in EditorX specifically to understand the industry standard when choosing a central term, because we are referring and we are aiming to please a very specific audience. They are used to seeing these terms everywhere. For us to be professional, we have to be rooted in that professional environment and use those professional terms. So here are some examples from my competitor research. So these are a few screenshots from Webflow. You can see they call their blank site template blank canvas. You can also see that in the empty state of their inspector panel, they tell you to select an element on the canvas to activate the panel. And also in interactions, they ask you to choose an element on the canvas. Also in Vev, it was also exposed in the UI. They also called the blank template the blank canvas, and also in the ad panel everywhere, they asked to add elements to the canvas. And here's an example of a competitor that only used it in the knowledge base article. So Duda did not expose the term in their UI, but they did talk about it in their knowledge base articles. So when we're talking about competitor research, I think there are two important things to consider. Like I said before, because EditorX's target audience is professional designers, it's really important to know the industry standards. However, just because something is the status quo, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best option. We can always look for better terms, better terminology, and just more intuitive language. However, in this case, I felt like I was leaning towards Canvas. It made a lot of sense, but I did need to dig a bit deeper into the research to make sure I'm making the right choice. This is when I decided to imagine the user flow. So at the end of the day, terminology affects our users in various ways. I decided to focus on two ways. We want our user flow to be smooth, and for that, we need intuitive language. But that's not always the case. Sometimes users need to refer to the language to understand the product. So as for the first point, I decided to take a step back and look at the two different terms and what they mean and their connotations. So before the research stage did seem more intuitive to me, simply because it was the term that we used internally. So when we think about the word stage, it is related to expression and performance. We could think of it as the place to express your creativity, which is great. But Canvas is related to art and design. So it's more closely related to design, and Editor X is marketed as a platform for designers. Google results. Like I said, we want our users to have a happy flow, but that's not always the case. So I wanted to make sure that when users are seeking help, they're finding relevant materials. And as I know from my conversations with our knowledge-based writer, most of the hits come from Google. So I searched Editor X stage, and I found like one of the first results was a negative review that seems to be recent, but it's actually not. It seems to be updated in like on August 1st, but not really. It claims that Editor X is still in its beta stage, which is not. And all of the screenshots are really old and all of the claims are outdated. We don't want users to be exposed to this kind of information, misinformation to be exact. But when you search Editor X Canvas, you find helpful and relevant material. You find all of the Academy X videos and tutorials. You find our YouTube videos, and you find exactly everything we want you to see and everything we want you to be exposed to. So I was convinced. All of the evidence pointed to the fact that Canvas makes more sense to the users. But that's not the end of the story. Editor X is a collaborative environment, so all decisions are group decisions. And the way you present the results can make or break your case. So initially, I just went to the team and I told them about everything that I found, but they weren't so convinced. And just like in UX writing, you should always tailor your presentation to the audience. So that's exactly what I did. When you talk to PMs usually care more about the business implications. So I showed them more of the Google results and how it negatively affects our perception and how users see us. When you talk to designers, they care about perception, image, and user experience. So I showed them competitor research. I showed them user voice. And as for developers, well, they just want the bottom line, so I sent them the presentation. And after that, after the second run, everyone was convinced, and I got the green light to change it to Canvas, and I changed all the instances of stage to Canvas. And then I made sure to define the term in the Editor X glossary to make sure writers of all disciplines were aligned. And that we distinguish the two uses, stage internally and Canvas user facing. So I think the lesson that we learned here is to never take anything for granted. We should always question the status quo. Before I did the research, I wasn't aware that we had a problem. No one on the team was. Everyone thought stage was perfectly fine and the inconsistency didn't seem so problematic. But once I did the research, it seemed more and more clear that we should really change it to Canvas. And also personally, I felt like research really helped me base my relationship with the team. It builds trust as a student. It really helped them trust me more and just have a better work experience with everyone. So that's it from me. Does anyone have any questions?
First of all, that was awesome. It's really, really cool to see the whole case study and how you convinced your team. You mentioned something at the very end. Are you still using Stage internally?
Yeah, we are.
Why?
Why? Because everyone loves Stage internally. I think it's really embedded in the DNA of the Editor X team. And at first, it was really important to me to stop using Stage, but I felt like as long as we're using Canvas in every user-facing platform, it's fine by me if they keep using Stage.
So shoot, now, Jenny, your question was so good, you made me forget. Oh, okay, so going back to the Google search results, did you share that information? I apologize to the people that are listening in because there are some like Wix internal things, but have you communicated with the marketing writers that you work with for Editor X when it comes to the Google research that you've done?
Yeah, I did. And also I searched everything again when I was preparing this presentation. So like you saw, the August 1st hit, like that's recent. I did this research about half a year ago, more. And when I noticed that it's still like this, I talked to the marketing team and they're handling it. Hopefully it will change soon.
Because definitely something that really like the light bulb that went off for me was sort of while like we definitely as writers within Wix do our best to be consistent across all of the different ways that we write in all of the different places, including marketing, KB, UI, etc. But this was actually a really interesting approach because you were essentially using things that would be in the marketing realm to influence your UX research, which I found really insightful. I thought that was so cool.
Thank you.
So thank you. My question is, why am I surprised at the end of this talk? Because I was sure that the right answer would be the page.
Really?
What
Okay,
happened
yeah.
to the page? And did you A/B
So-
test the results, and what did you test?
So in Editor X, the page wasn't an option because we refer users to this specific area of the builder. So we had to choose a term. When we use a page, the term the page, that doesn't tell them anything. So for now, like the feature that I mentioned in the beginning that we were working on is customizing the grid on the canvas. So when you tell them to customize the grid on the page, that can be anywhere, because also the inspector panel, which is our side panel, is also part of the page. So it wasn't really an option. And
So why did it come up in the customer care research they did? I mean, was it the questions they asked, or I mean, it was 98%?
it was a lot of everything. So first of all, a lot of the users asked different questions. They weren't referring, like it was really difficult to find quality, let's say, tickets that actually refer to that area of the builder, because users don't usually go and ask about it. This is why I decided to do research of my own and just like look at users' posts online.
Thanks. Sorry. First, that's a great question. I think, I really think the answer to why didn't we just use what all of our users are using is the same answer to why don't we just do what all of our competitors are doing? It's just not always the right answer for every situation, right? So sometimes our users are right and it makes sense. And they're using the language that works across the board, and there's no problems. But sometimes our users, we need to educate them. And that's part of our job as UX writers. So we need to be the ones that are guiding them and directing them to terminology that's being used, for example, across the industry, or as Lauren was talking about Jacob's Law, what's being used in all of the other sites that they're working on so that they can be used to and they can understand and they can have a consistent experience. And I think that at the end of the day, this is why Reem felt that she needed to kind of check all of those points in order to come to an educated decision at the end of the day.
We have a question from Zoom. How did you go about making the change from Stage to Canvas everywhere in the UI and the knowledge base? Any tips on how to make such a process more efficient?
Okay, so in the UI, it's pretty simple because we have Babel, which is our content management system. So I just searched Stage and changed all of it to Canvas. As for knowledge base, I think it was a process that was done, like it was a long process. I just notified our knowledge base writer and she worked on it. So I don't really know what her process is, but we have like just communicating between writers.
Okay, so it looks like your results were pretty straightforward, at least towards Canvas as opposed to Stage, but have you also considered A/B testing, or have you done that maybe?
That's an excellent question. And in this case, A/B testing wasn't possible. First of all, Canvas is used all over the builder. Second of all, in EditorX, we have a lot of A/B tests running at the same time. So it's really hard to single out the results that were affected by the terminology change. But in other cases, we do use A/B testing.
Thank you.
Thank you.